Hey, how is it going everybody? Today we're going to recreate Dominic Toretto's Mazda RX-7 FD from the first Fast and Furious movie, and to do this we're going to use the brand new Annis ZR350. Now really quickly before I get into the build, I will say that in order to get the winning is winning livery for this replica, you will have to be rep level 129 in the LS car meet. You can still do all of the other upgrades I'll be covering in this video, but unfortunately it will take some grinding to unlock this specific livery. Now to help you guys out, I do have some rep guides linked in the description that should make this process a little bit faster. Now for the sake of this video, I am using single player mods so that way I can show you guys the full build with all of the upgrades, but under normal circumstances this build will cost around $1.6 million if you get the ZR350 at its trade price and around $2 million at its normal price. And you can buy the ZR350 from the Legendary Motorsport website. So with that all out of the way, let's finally get into the build. Keep in mind that I will be skipping over all of the performance upgrades and just focusing on the aesthetic stuff. So for the front bumper, we went with the painted cutout bumper to give it the aggressive look of the Veilside kit on Dom's car. Next, we leave the rear bumper stock. Then moving into the engine, for the engine block, we just leave it stock. And then in the air filters, we chose the secondary performance air intake. Next, for the strut brace, we went with the lightened racing strut brace. And finally, for the intercoolers, we went with the custom intercooler. Now, even though adding this doesn't make much sense given that the engine model already has a V-mounted intercooler, it is the closest match to the front mount intercooler that was on Dom's car. Moving on to the exhaust, we chose the street exhaust. Now, even though it's got dual tips, the style of the tips themselves match up very closely with the Blitz exhaust that's on Dom's car. Next up, for the fenders, we leave the front fender stock. And then for the rear fenders, we chose the primary rear fenders. Now, even though Dom's car didn't have over fenders, we did choose these fenders to match up with the skirts that we'll use later on. You could leave the rear fender stock if you really wanted to, but in my opinion, it doesn't look as smooth when you put the skirts on later. Next, for the headlights, we just leave them stock. Then moving into hoods, for the hood catches, we just left them off. And we also just keep the hood stock. Next, we have the interior. For the dash, we just leave it stock. Then for the dials, we chose the pod-mounted tacho. There's no perfect match to the gauges that Dom's car had, but I still think that the pod-mounted tacho looks pretty similar. Next, for the doors, we just leave them stock. Then for the seats, we chose the carbon track seats because they match up best with the Recaro seat and the harness that were used for Dom's driver's seat. Next, for the steering wheels, I chose the Apex Basic wheel. I also think the Rally Basic wheel is another good match. And then finally, for the roll cage, we just leave it off. Next up, we have the lights, and for the headlights, we just leave them stock. Next, for the neon kits, we go with a neon layout of the front, back, and sides. And then for the neon color, we chose red. And next up is the livery, and of course we choose the winning is winning livery. This is a direct reference to one of Dom's lines from the movie. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you will have to be rep level 129 to unlock this. Next up, for the louvers, we just leave them off. And the same goes for the mirrors, we just leave them stock. Next, for the plate, we choose the blue on white 2 plate. Now, if you guys do want to make a custom plate for this replica, the number on Dom's car was 4CBO626. Then, moving into the respray, for the primary color, we chose a metallic Torino red. Then, for the pearlescent, I chose a candy red to give it a little bit of extra pop. Now, if you guys want to go for a cheaper pearlescent color, then you can do that too, because the Torino red is already a bright enough base color to begin with. We also choose a metallic Torino red for the secondary color to match up with the primary. Now, next up for the trim color, we chose an anthracite black. Now, normally I would have gone for a color that better matched that kind of orangey tan color that's in the interior and passenger seat of Dom's car, but unfortunately in GTA, the trim color only affects the color of the seats and the little bezels around the gauges. And for this, just to keep things looking clean, I think the anthracite black is the way to go. Then we have the accent color, and for this I chose ice white so it matched up with the gauges that we added earlier. Unfortunately, we cannot color the faces of the gauges white like they were in Dom's car. Next up, moving on to the roof, we just leave this stock. And then for the skirts, we chose the extended skirts. And here you can see just how well these skirts match up with the rear fenders that we chose earlier. Without the rear fenders that we added, these skirts won't match up as well. Moving on to the splitter, we just leave it stock. Next up, for the spoiler, we chose the carbon tuner spoiler. It is a little bit high in comparison to the spoiler on Dom's car, but it still is, in my opinion, the closest match. Next, for the sunstrip, we just left it off. Next, for the suspension, I chose the competition suspension. And then moving on to the taillights, we just leave them stock. Next up, we have the wheels. Now for this, I went into the chrome SUV category and I chose the Supernova wheels. Another good match in this same category are the Sunrise wheels. I think these are really close to the ones on Dom's car. However, I will say that it is very hard to find a good match for these wheels, and a lot of the replica builds I do, this tends to be a point of debate for a lot of people. So if you guys have any other wheel recommendations, feel free to let me know in the comments and I will make a list of them for people to try out for themselves. Next up, going into the tires. For the tire design, we just leave it stock. And then the same goes for the tire smoke, we just left it white. And last but not least, we have the window tints, and for this, I just went with a light smoke. So those are all of the parts you'll need to recreate Dom's RX-7. Now if you found this video helpful, feel free to drop a like on it, leave your feedback in a comment, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more replica builds like this in the future. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.